I am showing up. Because that's my fucking job. I am not a happy camper right now, because if you recall, if you saw my video for Old Man Yapping on Wednesday, then you know that I said I wish my house wasn't leaking. Well, on Friday, I discovered that it's not the house leaking. It's not the weather that is the problem. It's just coincidence that it's around the time of year that we typically get leaks in the basement, and it's been raining a lot. So what was actually going on was a pressurized water line in my refrigerator was leaking. And if you're not someone who has gone out and actually bought a refrigerator, you're probably like, so? And if you are, you just went, ooh, oh, broken refrigerator, oh. Because it's a fucking nightmare. Everything's got to come out of the refrigerator, and you got to figure out where and how to store all of that shit while you get the new refrigerator. And the new refrigerator typically cannot be run for 24 hours after it arrives. But as luck would have it, because it's the pressurized water line, I have a stopcock up here. That's not typical. Most homes don't have that. But in the plumbing of the house, I installed an individual stopcock on the water line for the refrigerator. So when the water line is leaking, I can turn off the water. Of course, because it's pressurized, there's not a whole lot you can do about relieving the pressure without going up there and just letting the water out of it, which is fairly simple. You disconnect the hose. The water comes out, you put the hose back, and it doesn't repressurize. So on top of that, there's typically when you have a part that's broken on a refrigerator, you go on the internet to find out, okay, well, what part number is this? How do I get this part? And the answer is, you don't, because the manufacturer only sells this part to registered dealers who have a properly trained service technician on staff. If you're Joe homeowner and you just want to replace the broken shit in your refrigerator, too fucking bad. But I am a resourceful individual, so I did manage to fix it. It's just a pinhole in the pressurized water line. And the only thing you can do with a pinhole in a water line, I mean, we tried the obvious. Can we just put duct tape on it? No. What about flex tape? If we get that flex tape shit, can we put that on it? No. Well, ain't nothing else for it. Let's chop the part of the line off. Let's chop it off above the leak, and we'll pull the compression fitting and reattach it. And that's what I did. And now things are fixed and everything's cool. You got the water back on. But it's been leaking water into the floor for a week. So there's a lot of additional damage that needed to be assessed and cleaned up and figured out. And it's not going to be cheap to fix all that shit. But yeah, so I'm not having a good week. That's just like, it was the day before yesterday. It feels like yesterday because it's like the wee hours of the morning now, but I've done like, I don't know, it feels like 50 false starts on this video because it is that time of the week, and it is time to show the fuck up and like do stuff and get stuff done. I really don't feel like it. But when you don't feel like it, that is precisely when you need to fucking do it. That's when you need to show up. That's when you need to do your shit. And that's just one of the many reasons The last week has been a particular pain. And one of the lesser ones is I am kind of solidifying and forming the real shape of my big idea for Yandere Survivors, if I'm still going to call it that, which I don't think I am. But that big idea is, instead of dying when you run out of health, when your health is depleted, damage decreases your experience. So the enemy is making you weaker as they attack you, and you get this additional buffer of time before you actually die, but you also have this catch-up thing to play. And I've run through this in my head. I don't have enough of the game done to actually test this. And that's very frustrating, because when you can't test something, you don't know how it's going to work. Especially, I mean, this is emergent. I've never seen a game that does this before, and I don't know how it's going to spec out. But one of the things that immediately comes out of it is, usually, when you get toward the end of a level in a roguelite of this variety, in any kind of horde survival game, because of the timer and because of the way that waves are managed, you have a pretty good idea what level the player is. Not anymore, you don't. The player could be anything all the way down to level 1. And it also has this kind of accelerating thing, because typically when you start taking damage from the horde, it happens quickly. And you end up running around with like minimal amounts of health. So if you're running around with minimal amounts of experience before you die, that's going to be a problem, because you got to gather all that experience back up. And one of the things that I'm thinking is, to kind of fix that, I could have you drop the experience. So instead of the experience disappearing, you're dropping the experience. And that way you can go back and you can pick it up. But I haven't gotten the game to the point where I can actually test this and see how well it works. I don't know what the final experience of that is going to be. And because I don't know what the final experience of it is going to be, I can't really commit to it as the way the game's going to be, because maybe it fucking sucks. If you haven't tested a game mechanic, you don't know whether it sucks. Like, I had the bright idea back in the mid to late 80s that I was going to redesign the complete combat system for Dungeons and Dragons to make it easier. Well, when you redesign the combat system for Dungeons and Dragons, you also have to redesign armor class. And when you redesign armor class, you got to redesign hit points. And when you rebuild hit points, well, now you got to rebuild the damage that all of the weapons do. And that means that you have to go back to all of the monsters. You have to go back to all of the monsters. You have to redefine what hit dice means and what hit points mean. And you have to muck around with experience calculations. And then you get to the point where you're like, well, hold on. We have to go through all of the spells at this point. And it became a mess. And I spent over a year working on that until I finally got all of the things fixed. It's what we call a cascade failure. You move one thing and a bunch of other stuff falls over. And it's very common in economics. And that's one of the things that just kind of made the light bulb go on in my head that went, combat is an economy of health. And when you start looking at it that way, a lot of stuff becomes easier to think about and easier to work with. So what I'm thinking about here is dramatically altering the economy of health. Oh, and in the end of that redesign of the Dungeons and Dragons combat system is that I took that to my group and none of them wanted to learn it because everybody had already invested all of this time and energy learning the way stuff already worked. When you bring them something new and say, it's easier, no, it's not, because I already know this and I would have to learn that from scratch. So, a lot of lessons learned on that. Anyway, that's one of the big things that I'm wrestling with is I've got to get the game to a point that I can actually test this and see how well it works, which means I got to do hit boxes and hurt boxes and health values and damage and attacks and that's a lot of work. I mean, it needs to be done. It's not like it doesn't need to be done, but it's one of these things where I'm like, what if this concept doesn't work? If this concept doesn't work, then I'm back to square one. I don't have a killer idea for how the game could work. And I don't know. I mean, it doesn't leave me worse off than before. I have to do the hit boxes and the hurt boxes and the damages. It has to be done either way. It's just I just have this idea to test at a later point in the development. And I'm excited about that idea and I want to test it, but I can't test it yet. So that's frustrating. And the other thing that's frustrating me is y'all have probably noticed that I am old. And one of the things that comes along with being old is thinking you don't need to listen to other people. You think you know what you need to know. You think that you have the experience that you need to make the decisions that you need to make. And the older you get, the more convinced you get of that. But it doesn't actually become that much more true. If you haven't specifically studied the area and the field that you're making decisions about, you are no better prepared to make decisions about it than anybody else who is just starting out. And I put a hold on all of my art stuff when I was 16 years old. And I never really put any more energy or effort into it until I was almost 50. So I paused for 35 years. I don't know any more about how to learn art than a 16-year-old. And that's a tough pill to swallow. And being in my mid-50s, even being in my early 50s, it's hard to admit that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And what I think all of us who are weebs have encountered is the teacher going, you can't start with anime. You can't just do anime. You can't just do these comic books that you're looking at, these cartoons that you're looking at, this anime, these manga. You can't just do that. You have to do realistic. Because if you don't do realistic, you do not have the foundation to do those other things. And they're right. We don't want them to be right. It's like we want them to be wrong about it. We want them to be just going, no, you must do it the way that I did it. And we're like, it's a new world. You don't understand. You're too old to understand. And it makes sense that we would think this when we're young, because here I am over here thinking I know better than my teachers, the same way I did when I was 16, and going, no, you can just work on anime shit. You can just work on semi-realism. You don't need to learn realistic rendering, realistic painting. Just fucking Dunning-Kruger effect is what it is. Is the whole thing where you end up at the peak of Mount Stupid and you're like, I know exactly what I'm doing, and you don't know shit. And the thing about art, the thing about like any field, okay, is that it's really 50 different things that you need to learn. It's like when artists tell you study the fundamentals. There are like 12 fundamentals, and they all have to be studied individually. And if you only study 2 or 3 of them, and you just kind of give a casual glance at the others, you'll think you understand those others. You fucking don't. You're an idiot, and you just don't know it. And over the past 6 years, every few months, I discovered that I'm an idiot about something new. And I don't like that. I'm old. I'm tired of being an idiot. I did all of my being an idiot when I was younger. I'm not supposed to be doing the be an idiot shit. You know, the person who goes out and be's an idiot is not me anymore. Except it is, because I'm trying to do something that I don't know how to do. And I don't really know. You never really know whether you've gotten past all of that shit. You have to reach the point. You have to reach the point where you actually know what you're doing before you can look back and go, oh, okay. I'm past Mount Stupid on all of that stuff. I've learned all of that stuff. And now I can just like improve all of it and try to keep it all reasonably well put together. And there's a reason that we call the area just after Mount Stupid the Valley of Despair, because that's where you realize not only didn't you know everything you needed to know, you don't know shit, and you got all of this shit to learn. And I need to put a lot of effort into realistic drawing and realistic shading and realistic rendering, because I need that baseline to stylize from. And I don't wanna. I don't wanna. It's too much work. I don't wanna. And yeah. Sorry, I just had to indulge my inner 4-year-old for a moment. But there's all of this basic stuff I have to learn. And I really don't want to learn it. I don't really have a choice. It's got to be learned, and nobody else can learn it for me, so. Kind of is what it is. We'll get ourselves a midtone here. And then we'll start from that midtone, and we'll go, here's good shadow color here. And here's a good highlight color here. Let's desaturate that a little more. Actually, let's hue shift a little bit. Let's take our highlight color more in that direction. And we'll take our shadow color more in that direction. Give it kind of a rosy texture there. Let's make them overlap properly. Let's start with our highlight, and then we'll overlap our midtone, and then we'll overlap our shadow, and then we'll select that top bit and delete it, and select the rest of the top bit that we missed and delete it. And then we'll deselect and Move that up to the top corner, and let's think about solid shapes. It's probably going to be boring as fuck because I'm just going to be working on solid shape ideas here. We're going to start with our mid-tone front, and then up on the top. Well, first of all, we've already fucked this up because we do not have the edges converging properly. There we go, that's better. So now we can take that and we can go, okay, this side over here is going to be away from the light. So being away from the light, it's going to be darker. There we go. Fill in that space. Clean up that edge. Get that edge to converge a bit. Clean up that edge. And we don't actually need to clean up that edge because we're going to do the top here. That top will be highlighted because that's where the light is coming from. Got kind of this thing going on. Clean up that edge. Make sure it converges properly. And let's do a kind of a rim highlight here. Man, we got some ugly spots to clean up there. Clean up. And we'll do this. This kind of edge coming up there. Let's shore that up a bit. Clean that up. All of these little inconsistencies. To shade this a little better, let's do a little bit. Let's add a new layer and we'll clip it. There we go. There's our clipping. So we'll take that and we'll use, let's use the speckle brush. And just kind of get ourselves some shading going on there. We'll do kind of the same thing with the back of the Let's kind of give that some texture. Don't like the way that looks. I don't like the way that looks. Let's back up with that little undo key. Okay, so let's try the jitter gouache. The jitter gouache. Up of that. And this should give us a little bit of variation. So if I start fairly large, and then go a little smaller, I don't like that effect at all. If we just use dry gouache. Let's use dry gouache, darken it up a little bit. And then we just kind of come in here. The bottom should be a little. There's kind of the back. So if I start, hold on. If I start large, like so, to give it kind of an initial wipe, and then I go smaller and go, it's especially darker in here. What if I go a little hue shifting there, and then I go, okay, so let's come in this area. And take it even farther and go even smaller. A little less red now. End up in a little higher. I'm not very happy with the look of that. Darken a little there too. Drop that back in. A little smaller. Smaller. And then up here on the front, I do want to give this some character. So let's use the speckle brush and we'll do a layer that's a little darker. Then we'll do a layer that's a little brighter. To give it some character. Make it feel like and it's spilling over onto the side over here, so let's go back to our dry gouache and use that to kind of blend things in. Better, I guess. Absolutely not feeling it right now, but the whole point of these videos that I do at the end of the week is to make me work on stuff that I need to work on instead of only ever working on the things I think are fun. So the part where I don't feel like it is the part that makes it the most important. I gotta go to the Scott Robinson book on how to render. I think that's the right next thing to do. I've been working on portraits over the course of the week, so of course I got Hogarth's drawing the human head over here. But yeah, I think I need to back up to the beginning of Scott Robertson's work on how to render. Light, shadow, and reflectivity. Maybe I need to start with Scott Robertson's how to draw first. Excuse me. Shit, where is it? Pretty sure I have it. Way down further, there it is. Yeah, there we go. Oh, this fucking idiot thing. And some paper practicing for answer. This doesn't need to go on video. This is my showing up for the week. I showed up. I did some shit. I'm going to continue doing more shit. Not having a good week. Next week has to get better. So, you know, do a little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. And I will do my yapping on Wednesday as usual, but for now, okay, bye.